Welcome into another session of Free Mind Thinkers. I am your man, Big Brother Tucker, and let's just jump right into this one. I know I'm a little late and a little behind the times when it comes to certain news headlines, but they're always worth discussing. Better late and more accurate than to be first and completely wrong, I believe. So let's talk about the incident with one of my favorite football players, a former football player, Jack Del Rio, who is now the defensive coordinator for the newly renamed Washington Commanders, formerly known as the Washington Redskins. To me, the incident is not as egregious as people are making it. So for those of you who don't keep up with sports or know exactly what I'm referring to, let me give you the full recap, followed by my 2 cents on the situation. The Commanders' Jack Del Rio made comments last week. So back on June 9th, the Washington Commanders defensive coordinator called January 6th riot a dust-up. And here's how it went. Jack Del Rio, defensive coordinator for the Washington Commanders, has apologized after referring to the Capitol insurrection as a dust-up. Here's what he said. After an off-season practice Wednesday, Del Rio compared Black Lives Matter protests to the attack on the Capitol. Quoting Jack Del Rio here, "I see the images on TV. People's livelihoods are being destroyed. Businesses are being burned. No problem. And then we have a dust up at the Capitol. Nothing burned, and we're going to make that a major deal." Del Rio issued an apology Wednesday afternoon for calling the attack on the Capitol a dust up. He said, and quoting again, "Referencing that situation as a dust-up was irresponsible and negligent, and I am sorry. I stand by my comments condemning violence in communities across the country. I say that while also expressing my support as an American citizen for the peaceful protest in our country." There's nothing that I saw that was wrong in anything that he said. Nothing. Earlier in the week, Del Rio compared the insurrection to Black Lives Matter protests in a reply to a tweet about a guide to January 6th hearings, which began last Thursday evening, of course. Jack Del Rio said in his tweet, "Would love to understand the whole story about why the summer of riots, looting, burning, and the destruction of personal property is never discussed, but this is." Again, a very legitimate statement. Very legitimate question. I will get into the details of that in a moment, but that is a very, very legitimate question. So there is, maybe it's from my perspective, maybe it is just me, but I see nothing wrong with what is being said so far. Going down a little bit further into the article, it says, in a statement, NAACP President Derek Johnson said it was time for Del Rio to resign or be terminated. NAACP President Derek Johnson says, and I'm quoting, "Downplaying the insurrection by comparing it to nationwide protests, which were in response to a public lynching, is twisted. You can't coach a majority black team while turning your back on the black community. It's time for you to pack up and step off the field." It's amazing to me how people who have come from the roots of oppression and intolerance, and come from the area of being so quickly written off and dismissed, how one mistake by a particular group or race should automatically disqualify that person. How those people who come from those beginnings, who come from that, are now doing that. To me, that's a major, major insult. I just don't Let me continue on. So that's what Jack Del Rio said to get this whole hullabaloo, this kerfuffle, to get all this nonsense started up. A statement released by the Washington Commanders after Jack Del Rio apologized to the team. And on, let's see, as a matter of fact, the apology came on June 10th, where the Washington Commanders released a statement. That statement saying, "This morning, I met with Coach Del Rio to express how disappointed I am in his comments on Wednesday. His comments do not reflect the organization's views and are extremely hurtful to our great community here in the DMV. As we saw last night in the hearings, what happened on the Capitol on January 6, 2021 was an act of domestic terrorism. A group of citizens attempted to overturn the results of a free and fair election, and as a result, lives were lost and the Capitol building was damaged. Coach Del Rio did apologize for his comments on Wednesday, and he understands the distinction between the events of that dark day and peaceful protests, which are a hallmark of our democracy. He does have the right to voice his opinions as a citizen of the United States, and it most certainly is his constitutional right to do so. However, words have consequences, and his words hurt a lot of people in our community. I want to make it clear that our organization will not tolerate any equivalency between those who demanded justice in the wake of George Floyd's murder and the actions of those on January 6th who sought to topple our government." I read that statement a few times, and I need to update and let people know that Jack Del Rio is still employed by the Washington Commanders. He has deleted his Twitter account, so that is the latest as of the time of this recording. Here's my problem, y'all, and I really need y'all to help me understand this. At what point in time can we stop the hypocrisy? At what point in time do we say, "Hey, what happened during the George Floyd protests were not peaceful"? People say mostly peaceful. If it was mostly peaceful, we wouldn't have the damage that we did. I want to go back to President of the NAACP, what he said. What he said was something that was so just really, or are you serious moment for me, when he said downplaying the insurrection by comparing it to nationwide protests, which were in response to a public lynching, is twisted. No, the equivalency is he's not comparing the two. What he's comparing the two was the treatment of the two incidents. He wasn't comparing the two actions. He was comparing the treatment of the two incidents. So let's get that straight, Jackass Johnson. I mean, that's just asinine. Because I'm going to show, and I'm going to read to y'all and show to the video viewers stats that will show the dramatic difference between these two events. He's not comparing the two events. He's comparing to how the two are being handled, and he's damn right for it. Damn right. They had a hearing over an event that lasted for 5 hours. January 6th, from the time the riot kicked off to the time order was restored, was 5 hours. There was weeks upon weeks upon weeks of people destroying, looting, tearing down shit. People getting hurt, murdered, and everything else during these riots. During these mostly peaceful protests. And let's go back to that dumbass statement. These mostly peaceful protests. Something else I want to address before I get further into it is on the Washington Commanders Twitter account where they posted that statement that I read to you earlier. They said the statement is from head coach Ron Rivera. I watched Ron Rivera play. He played in Chicago with Mike Singletary, Refrigerator Perry, under Coach Mike Ditka. I'm not saying that Ron Rivera is a dumb man by any stretch. No. But if you've ever listened to how Ron Rivera handles situations such as negative press, criticism, y'all know that this statement isn't anything that Ron Rivera would say. No, this statement was written by the Washington Commanders. This statement is a kiss-ass piece to keep the Washington Commanders out of the headlines even more. The Washington Commanders for the last year, for the last 12 plus months, have been buried in scandal after scandal after scandal. Sexual harassment abound. It's from the top to the bottom. This is called, I want to get some positive press. So they're going to sacrifice one of their own. Because, as I read to you at the beginning, Jack Del Rio didn't say anything negative. He didn't say anything blasphemous. He didn't say anything offensive. The man asked a question. And for asking a question, this is what he got. Now, there is somebody that I have to completely agree with on this matter. There is a Washington Commanders football player, Jonathan Allen, a Commanders defensive tackle and team captain, told NBC4 Sports Washington that he doesn't care about Del Rio's opinion. I don't care about his opinion. As long as he shows up every day and he works hard, that's what I want from my defensive coordinator, which is the approach we should all have. Let me ask you people something. Everybody that's working a 9-to-5, do you give a damn about what your boss thinks about your favorite TV show? Do you care what religion he is? Do you care if she's faithful to her husband? You don't care. Do you care about what they may think about your favorite food? No, you don't give a shit. And you shouldn't. It's their opinion. Sometimes their opinion may be valid. They may look at your favorite meal and say, hey, man, that's really unhealthy. And it just may be. Their opinion may be based in fact. That's what Jack Del Rio did. He put out a fact-based opinion and question. And like most people on the left, like these leftists, like these left extremists, instead of answering and addressing the question, they call you a ist or a phobe. Oh, you're a racist. You're a phobe. Oh, you're a this, you're a that. They never want to address exactly what the issue is. Because there is no way that you can say, oh, I'm going to pour an entire congressional committee together to investigate one incident when there are incidents across this nation surrounding the George Floyd mostly peaceful protests and no one was held accountable. I will show you what I mean by that. As I said earlier, I am going to show you the actual difference between the two. So here we see the headline. It's on a website called ricochet.com, where the headline says, January 6th Violent Terrorist Insurrection and 2020 Summer of Love Compared. Real Clear Investigations has a handy article and chart that compares January 6th insurrection that was worse than Pearl Harbor, 9/11, and the cancellation of Firefly combined. That last part, it was a dig, but trust me, there are actual politicians and people in government that said the January 6th insurrection was worse than 9/11. Yes, they actually said that. Worse than 9/11. So let that sink in just for a second. Here are some of the takeaways from that investigation. The summer of 2020 riots resulted in some 15 times more injured police officers, 23 times as many arrests, and estimated damages in dollar terms up to 1,300 times more costly than those of the Capitol riot. Authorities have pursued the largely Trump-supporting Capitol rioters with substantially more vigor than suspected wrongdoers in their earlier two cases, and prosecutors and judges alike have weighed Capitol riot defendants' political views into adjudicating their cases. Let me tell you what that little snippet right there means. For starters, let's look at the very beginning. When it say authorities have pursued the largely Trump-supporting, not Trump-supported, as a lot of people will try to convince you that Trump fed into this, that Trump said, go do this, that, and the third. When even in his comments, Trump said, hey, it's time to go home peacefully. It's time to stop this nonsense. And Trump said it is time to go home, but they won't read that entire segment. One of the things that the January 6th committee did last Thursday was they read the beginning of that statement and didn't finish it out where he told everyone to go home. That lets you know how political this nonsense is, which leads into the last part of the previous thing I read, when they said prosecutors and judges have weighed Capitol riot defendants' political views into adjudicating their cases. When you are dispensing justice, what a person's personal preferences are, such as religion, beliefs, and political affiliation, by law, is not to be considered when doling out and dispensing justice, punishments, things like that. So when you want to know why the two aren't being treated the same, it's political. Purely and simply, it's political. I'll continue. Dozens of accused Capitol rioters have been held in pretrial detention for months, where they have allegedly been mistreated. In the summer 2020 riots, the vast majority of charges were dismissed as they were in the inauguration of 2017 unrest. Prosecutors have dropped only a single Capitol riot case. I want y'all to just Google search Summer of Love protest and see what images you see the most of. It won't be mostly peaceful. It'll be like Jack Del Rio said, a whole bunch of people's businesses and properties being burnt down. But let's not just take this article at its core. Let's go to the actual statistical chart. Numbers are numbers. Facts are facts. You can omit, you can twist, you can bend, but you can't change them. So let's head to that, shall we? So here we go with the actual compared by the numbers by the three riots. Now, the 2017 inauguration riot, I'm not gonna use that simply for the purposes of this conversation. We're not gonna use the 2017 inauguration riot. Those were the riots that happened because Donald Trump was elected. What we're going to focus on here is what the point of the conversation is, what exactly the point that defensive coordinator Jack Del Rio was making. This is what we're going to focus on. So we're just not going to deal with the 2017 inauguration riot. 2021 Capitol riots, 2020 George Floyd riots. Here's our legend, the eye icon for click for additional information. Of course, the greater than icon stands for greater than. The greater than with the line under it is greater than or equal to. I forgot what they call the squiggly dash, but that's going to stand for approximately, and a check mark stands for yes. Police officer fatalities. 2021 Capitol riot, 0. 2020 George Floyd riots, 1. Now you might be wondering, well, wait a minute, but they're saying that so many cops died after Capitol riot. Allow me to inform you. Capitol Police Officer Brian D. Sicknick, who they hold up as their banner, that is their martyr, that is their, oh my God, that's the one that he killed. Police Officer Brian D. Sicknick died of natural causes, contrary to original reporting. 4 officers present during the Capitol riot committed suicide subsequently. There were no lives lost by law enforcement at the Capitol riots on 2021 January 6th. George Floyd riots. Let's see the one cop. Retired St. Louis Police Captain David Dorn killed. At least 12 officers, including Dorn, were shot in the George Floyd riots. 2 were allegedly murdered by an individual linked to the Boogaloo Boys, described by the FBI as a loosely connected group of individuals who espouse violent anti-government sentiments. They were reportedly targeted under cover of Floyd unrest. It is what it is. Officers assaulted or injured, 140. Information on that. U.S. Capitol Police 80, Metro PD 60. How many officers were assaulted or injured during the mostly peaceful? Remember that I told y'all. Remember that phrase. Mostly peaceful. We have one murder, one death under the mostly peaceful. Let's see. Officers assaulted. 2,037. Peaceful. Peaceful. Let me say again. Peaceful. 5 major city agencies in a survey of such officers across the U.S. and Canada reported police being shot or critically injured. One unnamed agency reported protesters discharging firearms from vehicles, caravans. Over 150 officers injured during the first week of demonstrations in Washington, D.C. alone. Mostly peaceful. Violent insurrection to overthrow a government. 140 officers. 2,000 under mostly peaceful. Let's keep this the story going. 9 officers who died. Ashley Babbitt and 3 others. Oh man, this thing is not going to let me read that right. Oh my goodness, why won't you come down? I am so sorry, y'all. Dang it, this damn technology. I can't, y'all. It won't give me the dang it thing. I can tell you this one, and I can probably fill in the blank. Ashley Babbitt shot by Capitol Police Officer Lieutenant Michael Leroy Byrd. Contrary to standard practice in police killings, officials and major media refused to disclose Lieutenant Byrd's name for months following the shooting, citing concerns for his safety. Now, when a white cop shoots a black person, that name is out in 20 minutes. But Lieutenant Byrd, being a black guy who shot a white woman, let's keep it under wraps. But remember, this is the insurrection that tried to shut down the government, take over the government. This is that insurrection. Consistent with its mission to fill gaps in investigative coverage, RCI reported extensively on this and other aspects of Lieutenant Byrd's identity, history, and conduct during this period in which he remained anonymous, as chronicled here. Lieutenant Byrd corroborated much of RCI's reporting himself when he voluntarily came forward in an August 2021 interview with NBC News. Lieutenant Byrd's interview followed the closing of a criminal investigation by the Justice Department in April 2021 and a subsequent administrative investigation by the Capitol Police in August 2021, in both cases of which he was cleared of wrongdoing. Another participant, Roseanne Boylan of Kennesaw, Georgia, was reported trampled to death, but the D.C. medical examiner ruled that she died of an accidental drug overdose. Her family believes it was a prescription drug, Adderall. 2 others, Benjamin Phillips of Ringtown, Pennsylvania, and Kevin D. Greason of Athens, Alabama, died of heart failure. So, of the people that died at the Capitol, these were people that were trying to overthrow the government. An unarmed white woman, a lady on Adderall who was trampled to death but quote unquote died of a drug overdose, and 2 folks that died of heart failure. Yeah, these are the top crack soldiers that are sent in to overthrow a government. Yeah, those are the people you use, all right. Yeah, them right there, man, that's what you use to overthrow a government. Yeah, that right there. That's what you use. Arrest approximately 840. Arrests during the George Floyd riots, it's over 16,000. Let's see what they say about those 16,000 arrests, shall we? 17% of all arrests for felony offenses. Out of the 2,735 for felony, 2,000. Wait, let me do this right, y'all, because this whole thing has me all irritated as get out. So out of the 16,000 arrests, about 2,700 were for felony offenses. Approximately 52% of major city law enforcement agencies surveyed across the United States and Canada reported having to rearrest suspects at least once at different protest-relevant events. The Prosecution Project catalogs 367 federal cases pertaining to all 2020 unrest. So how they flipped it right there? Now it's not even a riot, it's a 2020 unrest. That's what the Prosecution Project calls. Washington Post cites over 17,000 arrests in first 2 weeks following George Floyd's death. Ain't that something? On the arrest of the Capitol riots, approximately 225 charged with assaulting, resisting, and impeding officers and employees. Yeah, that's the crack team that went in to overthrow a government. I want you to understand this. They wanted to overthrow the government by getting let into a Capitol building and not going for the White House? Really? They did dude. Okay, I want to let the mainstream media know people are no longer buying y'all bullshit. They're just not. Look, I could go through this thing piece by piece, y'all. As I said, it's realclearinvestigations.com is the website that has the chart, and you can look it up. I'm going to hit a few more key points here, so you guys will see. But as you can see, and I'm moving solely intentionally, again, sorry for my audio only listeners. I'll hit a few key points here to really drive home Jack Del Rio's point about why these two things are not being treated equally. Why the 2021 riot is being held in a much more high regard than the 2020 George Floyd riots. Before I get out of here, let's talk about something else. When they talk about damage done to the Capitol and all those things. Estimated damage to the Capitol, $2.7 million. Okay, represents damage to the Capitol building and grounds and certain costs borne by the U.S. Capitol Police. Estimated damage for the 2020 George Floyd riots, $1 to $2 billion. Most expensive in insurance history among riots and civil disorders causing insured losses to the insurance industry across 20 states, covering damages from 5/26/20 to 6/8/20. Okay? But remember, overthrow the government. $2.7 million in damage trying to overthrow a government. The assaults. Officers reportedly sustained brain injuries, beating, tasing, gouged eyes, and lost fingers. Okay? Terrible. Terrible. I am a person of reason. Reasonable people understand that when you're trying to protest, when you're trying to make a point, when you're trying to do something to garner public engagement and get the community overall aware, you don't do violent things. That absolutely destroys your purpose and goal. And what they did, that was wrong. I'm not saying that the riot was right. Again, what I'm saying is, why is the treatment of the two incidents so different when one was way worse? So that was that. Now the assaults, federal charges. Okay, I'm sorry. These are federal charges. So you had, 255, what is that? Greater than or equal to 255 federal assault charges. Now, amazingly, for all the officers look at the numbers. Officers assaulted or injured 2,037, but only 44 federal charges, bro. Let's see what they have to say about that. Federal charges only. According to October 2020 AP analysis, including assaulting, impeding, intimidating federal employee or officer, interfering, obstructing, resisting law enforcement. Only 44. Y'all don't think that number seems a little off? For over 2,000 officers assaulted or injured, only 44 were federal charges. Now let's do the weapons. Weapons, more than 90. Okay? Let's see what these weapons were. Using a deadly or dangerous weapon or causing serious bodily injury to an officer. More than 80 defendants have been charged with entering a restricted area with a dangerous or deadly weapon. Previously, 5 suspects have been charged with possessing firearms, none with using them. Not charged with using them, just possessing them. Alright? Again, not good. Not a good look. Not smart at all. Really bad look for the purpose you are trying to get accomplished. Now let's hop over to the 2020 George Floyd riots when it comes to weapons. 79. Oh, so not as many. Well, let's look at that information. Federal charges only, according to the October 2020 AP analysis, including illegal possession of firearm, use of explosives, use, making, or possession of destructive device, including Molotov cocktails, receiving explosives, transporting a firearm into furtherance of civil disorder, teaching making use of explosive and destructive devices, excludes operating a drone in restricted airspace, pointing a laser pointer at an aircraft. Now, out of those two things, y'all, which one do you think is worse? As a person of reason, if you're a reasonable person, shouldn't you be asking, well, why isn't the George Floyd riots being investigated? Why aren't they being investigated? That's all Jack Del Rio asked. Additional details, again, I'll go through them quickly. Dangerous weapons encountered during the 2021 riot. Knives, flagpoles, fire extinguishers, baseball bats, tasers, crowbars, and tomahawk axes. Those are the dangerous weapons encountered for trying to overthrow the government. The dangerous weapons encountered for trying to overthrow the government were knives, flagpoles, fire extinguishers, baseball bats, and tasers for trying to overthrow the government. Now then, for the mostly peaceful protest, firearms, incendiary devices, including Molotov cocktails, rocks, bricks, bottles with frozen waters and glass, fireworks, including those improvised to explode, poles and bats, metal and wooden, hammers, wood, cinder blocks. Mostly peaceful. Government classification. Domestic terrorism, as defined by FBI Director Christopher Wray, who is literally an extension of this administration's bias. He has gone after anybody that the White House has said go after, even though the FBI is supposed to be unbiased. It's supposed to be completely bipartisan. They go after the right and the left alike. But I will let y'all do y'all own digging up into FBI Director for Christopher Wray. Riots is how they defined the mostly peaceful protest. Then Attorney General William Barr. The violence instigated and carried out by Antifa and other similar groups in connection with the rioting is domestic terrorism and will be treated accordingly. Now, you see how they said it was called domestic terrorism, but it got bumped down to riots. What I mentioned earlier, duration, 5 hours for a riot trying to overthrow the government. 5 hours, 12:53 p.m., rioters reportedly overwhelmed police and penetrate Capitol's outermost barricades. 2:11, rioters breached Capitol building. 5:34 p.m., Capitol declared secure by Sergeant at Arms. So just under 5 hours. The riots, the 2020 George Floyd riots, weeks. Data covers period from 5/25 to 7/31. That's over 2 months of rioting. Invasion of public space, there's a check for both of them. Defacement of property, there's a check for both of them. For the damage caused after the Capitol building, it was broken glass, doors, graffiti, varying damage of statues, murals, historic benches, original shutters, primarily from pepper spray and residue from chemical irritants and fire extinguishers. That's the damage done during the Capitol riots of 2021. 2020 George Floyd riots. Defacement of property. Multiple federal buildings attacked. 97 police cars burned. New York Police Department reported more than 300 police cars damaged. Maybe it's me. Maybe it's my interpretation of an insurrection, of a coup d'etat, but attacking one Capitol building, and I'm using the word attacking here liberally because that's what they want to call it. Let's say I go with y'all. So attacking one is a sign of trying to overthrow the government, but attacking multiple, they're just peaceful. Okay. All right. Explosions of the 2021 Capitol riot. Nope. Shootings by participants. Capitol 2021 riots. Nope. But these things were done by the 2020 George Floyd riots. Arson. None for Capitol. A check for George Floyd. Looting. Let's see what they have for looting. For looting, they have several items stolen out of the Capitol building, which I can completely see jackasses doing that. I can completely see jackasses taking stuff out of the Capitol building. That is not a good look. Looting for the George Floyd riots? Absolutely. 2,385 incidents appear to be coordinated and organized in some instances. Single looting event at unnamed shopping mall resulted in over $70 million in damages, per one unnamed agency. Impeding traffic. Yep. Vehicular crimes. Yep. Look, y'all, what Jack Del Rio asked and said was nothing that any person within reason wouldn't ask or say. He wanted to know why something that lasts 5 hours is getting way more intensely scrutinized and tried for something that lasted for 2 months with $2 billion of damage, multiple assaults and arrests. Why isn't that being investigated? This is why we here at Free Mind Thinkers say listen, lesson, learn more. To be more specific, stop listening to mainstream media. Stop being given your opinion. You heard me say several times through this one, I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to give you the name. I'm going to give you what to look up. You do your own research. You come to your own conclusion. I am not here. My brothers are not here. We are not here to give you your opinion. We are here to give you facts and express our thoughts on it. You do your own research, learn on your own, make up your own mind. Because this, January 6th versus George Floyd Riots, this is why we say listen, lesson, learn more. Because this, at its very core, is the epitome of political bullshit. That's going to do it for this segment of Free Mind Thinkers. If you like what you heard, don't forget to hit that like button. If you want to hear more of it, go ahead, hit the subscribe while you're at it. And please feel free to comment on anything that you hear. And as we always say here at Free Mind Thinkers, listen less, learn more. Don't forget that you can find us on all your social media platforms. Getter, Gab, Rumble, Odyssey, BitChute. And we are podcasts on several media platforms. Make sure you check out full episodes there in the podcast section or wherever you may get your favorite podcasts. Until the next time, y'all stay up.